Today on Smackey's Garage, we're going to be taking the engine out of our 2007 SkiDoo snowmobile. Now, last weekend, I lost a cylinder in my snowmobile. I ended up going about around 80 miles. On the last few miles of that, I ended up only firing on one cylinder. It was freezing out, so it was pretty much below 0 Fahrenheit. I ended up riding it home, getting back the last 2 or so miles, and it's only been running on one cylinder ever since. You know, it was a very bumpy day, so there's a chance that the carbs came loose. I pulled the plugs out, did a compression test on it. We're about 130 psi on one cylinder, 90 psi on the other. So cylinder, piston, rings, something's definitely shot there. I also ended up using a borescope to take a look at both cylinders to see if I could see anything. And there wasn't anything major that really stood out. I took a look at the carbs and it looked like one of the carbs might have slid out of the boot, unfortunately, because it was so bumpy. And that could have caused essentially no gas to go in the cylinder. Maybe that's the reason why it wasn't firing. But I took everything apart, put it back together. Still no compression. Fuel's coming out of the exhaust on the right side of the sled still. So it's coming apart. So this is gonna be a 3-part series. Episode 1 is me taking the engine out. Episode 2 is the rebuild of the engine. And episode 3 is gonna be putting the engine back in. Reason why I separated is because I don't know what's wrong yet, so I don't have any of the parts to do it. So in this video, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get this snowmobile engine out. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna get all the plastics off. We're gonna start there, and then we'll see what next step we're gonna take. I've already gone ahead and removed the battery because it's not needed. And I removed some of the rivets here that were falling out, but all these are essentially these 2 little brackets. You pull them up and this will just come right out. You can do it this way on both sides. Probably won't have this wire in here. This wire is for my ride light on the outside. So we're gonna take this off, 10 millimeters on the front, nut on the back side. Okay, so after those are off, this is pretty much what you're left with. You can see the main problem here is the engine's still pretty deep. You gotta take the exhaust off. You gotta take off essentially the clutches and everything, make it easier to pull out. So I think the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take the belt off and then remove this rear drive. Okay, now that the drive is off, I can go ahead, I'm gonna pull off the exhaust. You can see all the spring clips around it. I'm gonna go ahead and take all those off, and then this should just pull right out of place. Now this spring removal tool is what I'm using. I'll link this one, but you can use any spring removal tool to do this. Now, in here you're starting to see some of the problem. You can see the gas underneath that left side outlet. So I can see the fuel coming down, and that is probably because low compression, the fuel's not igniting, and it's just coming out the exhaust. Now, to get these bolts out, so the ones on this Y pipe, you need to use essentially a long hex with a ball on the end of it. I ended up purchasing some from Harbor Freight, but they also have them Amazon. But we're also gonna have to take off this coolant line down here, but we're gonna get to that next. First, let's do the carburetor and button everything up there. So now we're gonna go ahead and take this airbox out. Now to take this airbox out, you need a long Phillips. You're gonna have to take out this clamp here, plus the one on the other side, then the plug that's up top in there. After those are out, this can just be pulled out, and then we can look at what we're gonna do with the carburetor. Okay, now for the carburetor, I'm gonna turn this line off, so it's already off. So carb heat is off. That means I need to take out this line here. There's another line on the other side, which is the other side of the coolant. Got to take out these again to loosen off the boots and then move it out of the way. I'm going to end up taking everything out. So I'm going to take off the throttle, the carburetor, the choke. Then these lines need to come off up here. There is a solenoid there that these lines are connected to that need to come out. And then I should be able to just take the carburetor out, and that would be it. Then I'm going to plug up the fuel line. So the fuel line is on the back down in there. So I need to take this bolt, put it in there, plug that up. All right, long screwdriver. This we're going to use, now that everything's disconnected except for the fuel line, to loosen these out. And when I say long screwdriver, you really do need a long screwdriver. Okay, now with all those loose, I should just be able to yank the carburetors out. All right. And pull. And the carburetor's out. Now the fuel line is down here. Needle nose. I'm gonna put a bolt in it, and that'll be it. Gas everywhere. Okay, carburetor's out. All right, so carburetors are out. You can see I have the gas line buttoned up here. Coolant line buttoned up over there. I still need to drain the fluids from the coolant before I take everything apart. But I'm gonna go ahead, take out these because as you can see, these are not getting past here when we go to take the engine out. So next step is these, and then I'm gonna go ahead and probably take the Y pipe out. All right, so the Y pipe is out. We use essentially this, just they went in there tight, ball end hex on it. You can see in there now, that's where the exhaust is. I'm gonna put some tape over those just so nothing drops into them, but we're almost all set to come in out here. There's a few things we need to do on the, we need to take off the connector for the oil down there. We need to take off some of the coolant lines, so I need to pump those out. And then down here, one of the next things we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take off the starter cables that are down there. So both those starter cables need to come out. And then that is the coolant line underneath the starter. All right, so here's the puller that we're gonna be using. You can see the bolt here. Puller will essentially thread into the same length, and it has a tip here. So I'm gonna end up greasing the tip, greasing the beginning of the threads, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna screw it in to get the clutch out. All right, so I got my grease, got my puller. Now, if you don't wanna spend the money on this, you don't have to spend the money on this. A lot of people have ways to do it online that'll probably work good, but I figured it was 30 bucks. Saving a lot of money doing this myself. As well get the right tool. Make sure the thread's in correctly. Start turning. All right, so my clutch actually separated, so I ended up using heat on this to pull that out, but you can see I'm missing some teeth on the end of the clutch rod, so that needs to get taken care of, but we're now all the way out. So now what's left is to drain a lot of the fluids, disconnect some more of the wires up top, and I should be able to just pull it right out. All right, so down in here, we're looking at taking the starter out. So we gotta take out, there's a nut there, and there's one more underneath it. Then we're gonna take out this bolt here and the bolt on that side. With those out, I think the starter should come out, and then we'll get access to the coolant line right underneath it. Then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna drain the full oil tank. All right, slight change of plans since it appears there's gonna be another bolt down in here, which is apparently loose, and so that bolt is down in here. You can see it pivoting, so it was never actually tight on the sled, which, okay, we've got to figure that out, but you know, I'm not gonna be able to get that from any angle, so it looks like I should actually be able to lift the engine up with this on and pull it out. Either way, we'll find out together. Okay, now I'm gonna crack that bottom coolant line down there. That's the one that is at the bottom of the engine, which I feel is gonna be best. Then I have something underneath to catch any of the coolant that comes out. You can't really siphon out of the top tank up there, so I'm gonna do it this way. All right, now with that disconnected, I'm just gonna go ahead, let it drain for a little bit. But you can see it underneath there. Looking down here, you see that bolt, or that Phillips head that's out. Someone did have this apart at some point, obviously. All right, with that coolant line out, then we got a few more to do. So we got coolant line here. That goes in between the carbs. We got a coolant line up top. Then we're gonna go down to the oil system, which is hard to see, but it's underneath there. So there's an E-clip on it. When you take that out, it'll take out the throttle linkage. And then we gotta take out the oil hose, which we drained, so that's great. So finishing up with the coolant, we're gonna go ahead and take out this one first, and then this top one, then we'll move to oil. All right, so the line in here is a hard line, so it's going directly to there. No real way to push it back. So I'm gonna take out that coolant tank first to give me a little bit more room. So the plan is get this tube off, get the other tube off, then this entire thing shifts down after I shift this down, I should be able to just pull it out, assuming that this is loosened up here as well. When you're doing this, there's just a lot to loosen up and a lot to take off. All right, digging deeper into this, I'm struggling to get this out. So I'm gonna end up probably loosening up this oil tank and lifting it up just so that I can get this out, so that I can get that hose clamp off and get the rest out. Not that easy, but this is the next thing that needs to come out. Okay, so I was able to essentially unbolt this, lift this up, and then get that tank out. So now that the tank's out, I can go ahead and move on to what's next, the oil thing. But looking back here, it looks like everything is disconnected. There's none of these wires connected to the engine block. Nothing down there. So oil, maybe one more coolant line, then we're good. So for the oil down there, so you can see the pump down at the bottom, I need to take off that E-clip that holds the throttle connector on, and I should be able to just remove that line, plug it, and then on to the next step. All right, now we're finalizing a few things up here. You can see down there, I got to take the fuel line off the engine. Plus there's a few connectors that come out of that area of the engine. Up, there was one up to here, and then there's the other one going up front down there. Hard to see, where is it? Down there, so I need to take out those wires. But after I have that out, I should be able to just take out all the motor mounts and then remove the engine. All right, so those wires are disconnected. I found it actually easier to, instead of disconnecting the fuel line from the engine side, disconnect it from the pump from back here. So it's hard to see, but it is in there, so that's disconnected. Got to do the pull starter, so I put a vice grip on this. I'm going to untie this here and then tie it back up just without this in place, just so that it doesn't pull through. And then I got one more thing up top of the engine, and it's coming out. All right, now for the engine, I got to back this out, and then I got to take out 1, 2, and then there's going to be 2 more on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out, and take those out. So not only did they end up cranking this on, looks like Loctiting it, but they also ended up stripping this. So it's gonna make it even more of a nightmare to get apart. Oh well, we might end up drilling it. We will see, but that does need to come out to get some extra room to get the engine out. So whoever cranked this on to red locked it in place, it's not moving. Now this is where an easy out really saved my day. I could have drilled it out. That would have potentially caused some damage and taken a lot more time. I was able to use the easy out to get it right apart. So this is something that I gotta fix later. Get it in the vise, see if I can get it to start moving again. Okay, well, the engine is out of the sled finally. Now, everything looks intact so far. I mean, nothing is completely broken, which is great. But we gotta take it apart and figure out what's wrong. So look for that in an upcoming video. Don't forget to subscribe and set notifications on so that you will get notified when this video does come out. Thanks for tuning in this week on Smackey's Garage. I'll see you next time. Sounds like a little extra noise coming from this side.